what was some of the biggest takeaways from your career as a major leaguer to where maybe you didn't realize some of the things that maybe come your way?
Well, I mean, over the course of a career, 12-year major league career, there's a lot of stuff that, you're not prepared for. In the World Series 2002, I wasn't prepared with all the media hype before and after, especially after I had 19 RBIs and a huge home run in Game 6. And that I definitely wasn't prepared for, coming from a small town in Morris, Illinois, with about 6,500 people at the time. I think we're a huge metropolis now with about 13,000. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you're not prepared for, especially playing in Southern California.
Speaking of playing for the Angels in 2002, you hit the dramatic home run. What was that moment like for you? And not only that, but kind of the moment for you to kind of measure in the rest of your life. This is something you never get to take away.
I was just talking about that. That home run I had prepared for mentally for my whole life. My dad had played 9 years in the major leagues and won 2 World Series with the Cardinals in 64, 67. Lost in Game 7 of 68. And so, my dad had always prepared me to be a major leaguer and to be in those situations. So I had always visualized myself in those situations. So when it happened, I wasn't nervous at all. I felt comfortable in those situations. But after it happened and after it went out, I just remember this huge adrenaline and like all this memories flooded back in my head of my mom, my dad in the backyard saying, it's 3-2 count, 2 outs, bases loaded, down 1, bottom of 9, Game 7 of the World Series. What are you going to do? And my mom going, do it for the ring, Scott. And then all of a sudden, all those memories started flooding back. And so it was an amazing experience, something I'll never forget. Probably the biggest individual moment I ever had. But of course, when you the final outs made in the World Series, and of course 2002 and 2006, it's something that can never be taken away from you as far as an athlete is concerned. And so it was a special moment to be able to share it with my family and friends.
The count full to Spiezio, 3-2. Big pitch coming up. Rodriguez sets. The 3-2 pitch is belted to right field. Back on it goes Sanders at the wall. He can't get it. Home run! And they're back in the ball game. Scott Spiezio, a 3-run home run to right field into the corner. And it's the Giants 5, the Angels 3 in the 7th. He got a hold of one of those fastballs all right. Spiezio saw a lot of pitches from Rodriguez. And then he timed one and hit it out.
If Kenny Lofton gets the ball down, he can pull it. That's his long ball, down and in. Driven into right center field. Erstad says he has it. The Angels, world champions.
You mentioned 2006, 2007, you were with the Cardinals. The organization, of course, only 90 miles from here. What does it mean to you to be so close to home from here, knowing that you were not too far away from Busch Stadium?
Yeah, well, I'm about 4 miles north on 55, from Busch Stadium. When I was a kid, I was back there. It seemed like at least once a summer. Every year that ended in a 4, 7, or an 8, we were back there for a reunion for the World Series teams. Or the National League pennant teams. And so I love the city. I was always excited coming around the bend, seeing the arch, and then heading to Busch and, getting to see some of the current players like, Terry Pendleton, Ozzie Smith, Jack Clark, Tommy Herr, guys like that. And then some of my dad's teammates, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson, Mike Shannon, even some players like Stan Musial were always around too. I've got pictures of sitting on their lap when I'm 7 years old, and so to be able to then at the end of my career, once I thought my career was over, to have a second chance and be able to play for a team like the Cardinals and an organization in the city that loves baseball, it was a dream come true. And then to win it in St. Louis with my dad's number 26 on my back was just incredible.
For the first time since 1982, St. Louis has a World Series winner. Have you ever been swarmed? Well, you swarmed tonight in a big, big way.
Winning the World Series 2006, what would be your favorite moment from that year, but also just being a part of that team?
2006, I started my struggles in 2006, maybe the year 2005, the year before that, with addiction, and more so alcoholism. And so that was tough, but it was I was pretty focused on the field. Off the field, not so much, but on the field. And that team was a special team. We got along great. Just some great guys on that team. David Eckstein was my teammate in Anaheim when we won the World Series. And then, of course, again, and I could go on stories about him and I celebrating, not like crazily, but there was certain things that we did after every win in Anaheim, and we carried that over to St. Louis. So, when I got to spring training and saw that I was number 26, and I'm like, man, it's 2006, we're winning this thing, and I wasn't even on the team yet, and I'm saying we're going to win the World Series. So, yeah, it's one of those magical years.
How do you feel like what you've been through has maybe helped you out to overcome obstacles that you never really think that you would have had to get over?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was always one of those guys that thought counseling or anything like that was wimpy. Like if you're a man, you're not going to go seek help from somebody else. And when I was with the A's, I went and sought some help because of some of the stuff that was happening to me on the field. And he told me, there's nothing wrong with coming to ask for help. Get that stuff off your shoulders. And I remember him saying, hey, control what you can control. You can't control if they're going to play you or not. You can't control if they're going to send you down. Control the things you can control. And that carried over to, in 2006, even though I was still hesitant, to talk to the Cardinals about some of the issues I was having. In 2007, when they started getting really bad, I went to the Cardinals and said, hey, I need help. And they did a great job of getting me to a rehab facility to start learning what I was dealing with. Because nobody in my family had ever dealt with addiction of any sort. And so I didn't know what I was dealing with. And that was the beginning of the journey and learning how to kind of surround yourself with great people. And the other thing is my faith, my Christian faith, was the main reason that I was able to get through everything. My dad was the main reason. My dad retired in 1972, 5 days after I was born. So I was born September 21st, 72, and I think his last game was the 26th or 27th of September. He was only 30 years old when he played this last game, but there was no money in the game at that time, so he became my at-home personal major league coach, and we had stations in the basement that we'd do, and we had 2 mountains in the backyard where he pitched to me. I'd take ground balls every weekend at every position, fly balls. I could switch hit. I could play every position except for basically catcher. And that led to me having success. But not only physically did he teach me, but mentally. We talked about the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. and visualization and staying positive and positive affirmations and breathing techniques and all that sort of stuff. At a young, at 10 years old, I already knew the difference between subconscious and conscious thoughts and what I needed to do in order to slow myself down as a player in certain situations. And so, like I said earlier, I was visualizing my home runs in the World Series before I ever got there.
The Cardinals have the only father-son combination to win World Championship rings with the same team. To present his son Scott with his ring, here's a member of the 64 and 67 World Champion, Scott Spiezio.
What would you like the message to be? What's the number one message you want people to understand today when you speak to the crowd here in Effingham Performance Center?
Yeah, I mean, today what I'm going to be speaking about is, my story, but also my faith journey. Being a Christian, sometimes you feel like you're unworthy. And, I had to accept forgiveness to forgive myself, but also realize that God forgave me. And his mercy and grace is enough for me to keep going and try to be that light in the darkness for other people. What I want to try to do is instill hope in people. And I always say, there's a saying I always said, as long as you got a breath, you got a pen to write a great ending, and so never give up. God's always with you. And sometimes he's carrying you like he did for me. But in the end, all you got to do is realize he's with you and start walking beside him.
We appreciate you coming down here to speak in front of the great crowd here at Effingham Performance Center, but the message that you're going to share with everybody, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We appreciate, number one, from a former Major League player like yourself.
Oh, well, thanks for spending time speaking with me. And, it's an honor to be able to come down and speak and share my story and hopefully give hope to the crowd. Phil and Kyle have been great to me. And, I'm excited. Hopefully we can move some people out there. And I always ask God to give me the words to say so that I can help those people out there that might need to hear it. And, I just ask that the Holy Spirit be with me while I speak, and it's awesome to be down here.
So I have good news about Jesus, and we're going to hear later in Scott Spiezio's testimony about a man who had a rough time in his life, but God redeemed him. Boy, we can always rejoice in that. And that's the ultimate victory in Christ. So be looking forward to what you're going to experience. Welcome up the Director of Fellowship of Christian Athletes for our region and a guy who works mighty hard to make sure young people have an opportunity and their coaches to meet Jesus. Please welcome Kyle Stortson.
Challenge with the gospel. I think you're going to find Scott Spiezio's testimony extremely powerful and very relatable, especially in the world of sports.
This man has a story to tell. He was a part of 2 World Championship baseball teams, one of those being the St. Louis Cardinals. And he and his father, Ed Spiezio, are the only 2 Major League Baseball players ever in the history of Major League Baseball to have both been World Series champions. Pretty special. We're very, very pleased to have this year's FCA Night of Champions guest speaker with us tonight. Would you please give a warm Effingham area welcome to Mr. Scott Spiezio.
Greg, so you're a Cubs fan, huh? Uh-oh. Do you want me to break out the Cubs jokes? So you have something a little wrong. There's actually about, I think 8 or 9 father-son combinations that have won the World Series. My dad and I are the only ones that have won 2 apiece, and the only ones that have won with the same organization, that being the St. Louis Cardinals. I think you guys have 3 rings, right? Pretty sure the Cubs only have 3 rings. Does anybody remember how many the Cardinals had? 11. 11. So in another 108 years, you guys will tie me and my dad. I wasn't expecting this. This is a great turnout and a great place to gather. Thanks to Kyle and Phil and Carrie. I'd always pray, God, my prayer life wasn't the greatest. It was like, please keep everybody healthy and let me play 10 years in the big leagues. Being in Southern California, I started getting asked to do all these things to be on the David. Some of you guys won't know what this is, but David Letterman. I was the guy that did the David Letterman top 10 list. And then I jumped in the limo and went straight to Jay Leno and did that show. And then they had me do Monday Night Football Live, and then I was on sitcoms and all these things. And I started getting pulled in all these directions, and I started getting pulled away from God. And I said, the thing I always say is, like, I started believing all this hype, and started developing pride and ego. And what I call ego is edging God out. That's what I did. And it wasn't a plan, but that's exactly what happened. I started edging him out. I started not reading the Bible, just trying to kind of fit in. And so I went down to I never used to go down to the team hotel bar. I went down there, and I remember the first night I was drinking a beer, and somebody goes, "Here, man, have a Jack and Coke." And so I drank a Jack and Coke, and one turned into two turned into three, and so on and so forth. And the next day I went back down there, and same thing. And as I started drinking more and more, I started enjoying it, and I started enjoying the feeling it gave me. And what happened is, the more I went down that path, the more bad decisions I made, because I wasn't the person I normally am, and made decisions I would never make. I'm going through a divorce. Like I said, making a horrible decision. It was all my fault. I had 3 young kids at the time, so I didn't get to see them every day. And as I started hanging out with the people I would have never hung out with. I never say there's bad people. I say there's good people making bad decisions, and that's the people I was hanging around. And instead of trying to go back to who I was, I just kept going further away from myself. I ended up getting released by the Mariners. I thought my career was over. In August of that year, I got released. In November, I was with a new girl that was not the greatest influence with me, not a Christian, and introduced me to cocaine. I tried it. It's kind of like anything. The devil got me. Thinks it's not that bad the first time, and then all of a sudden it starts grabbing a hold of you. Although I wasn't really deep into the addiction at that time, I still was drinking a ton, and I was feeling sorry for myself. I was still drinking too much. And then in August of that year, we were in Arizona, and we had a day game and flew in, and we weren't playing until the next night. So I went out with some of the guys, and while we were out, cocaine was brought out, and I said no at first, and then I said, okay, I'll do a couple, and I did, and I ended up the next day hitting 2 home runs. And then they're like, you gotta do it again. And I said, okay. So I did it again, and I hit another home run and a double. And then I said, that's it, I'm not doing it anymore. The next day, I struck out 4 times, golden sombrero for the first time in my life. I'm like, well, I better do it again. So I did it again, hit another couple doubles, and from that time on, through the playoffs, I was doing a little bit every night as like a superstition. Well, that superstition, by the end, I said at the end of the season, I'm gonna stop. By the end of the season, and now we win the World Series, and it's an amazing thing. But now it's party time. Like, oh yeah, we got to celebrate now, and it just became. By 2007, I had given up everything in my life for 2 things, and that's drugs and alcohol. I was away from the Bible. I wasn't reading the Bible, and I remember Denzel Washington said to Will Smith when he came up and smacked Chris Rock in the Oscars, he told Will Smith, when you're at the top, sometimes that's when the devil comes after you. Well, I didn't know I had an enemy. I had no idea, and I didn't know the enemy was pursuing me. And like I said, I didn't know that the Word of God was my armor and shield, and I was lost. Everything revolved around my next drink and my next drug use. And the Angels, or the Cardinals finally released me in 2007. I became a distraction. And it was awful, you know. And I remember my dad giving me a book. It was Dr. Charles Stanley, When the Enemy Strikes. And stuff started making sense, you know, that I was in a spiritual battle, you know. But for the next 10 years, or more than that, the next 10 or 11 years, I went to next 10 years, I went to rehab 11 times. I never gave up, but I still believed in God, but I felt like I was unworthy. Like I had blown like you guys were talking, the coaches were talking about your platform, using your platform. I was doing that before. I was going out with Donnie Moore and some of my chaplains, talking to students and things like that, and I thought I'd blown that. I started believing the devil's lies, his fiery darts. You know, I felt I'm unworthy. You know, I can't forgive myself. How would he be able to forgive me? You know, and then I started realizing that. You know, I started getting back and started to read the Bible. Tanya came into my life and started bringing me to church. And I started getting surrounded by some amazing Christians. If he can use them, then he can use me too. He's not done with me yet. And so I never gave up, and I started getting more and more involved in church. Admit that you're powerless over alcohol and that your life has become unmanageable. It was hard for me to admit that I was powerless over anything. Anything you put in front of me, I felt that I could do it, you know, on my own. I couldn't do this on my own. I kept trying over and over to do it on my own. I kept taking the wheel from God, and that's, you're right off the cliff. And I kept doing that over and over and over, and that's the definition of insanity, thinking that it was going to change. And so I was off drugs at that time, but, and I had some little bouts of sobriety here and there, but, you know, she was diluting my drinks, I didn't know it, and I ended up going getting an MRI, and afterwards she says, "You're yellow." So I went, it took her a long time to convince me, but I ended up, after about 24 hours, going to the emergency room. They said, your liver is, you know, your liver's not doing good. You know, you've got about a 20% chance to live. I wasn't afraid, but because of my Christian faith, but it wasn't an easy call to make, to tell your parents and your sisters to come up and tell them who you want to have what, you know, and what you want them to do with for your children and things like that. And I just remember praying to God and said, "God, this time I mean it, you know, help me, take away my cravings." I don't think I'd ever asked him that. I just said, like, help me, you know, get through this. And he always would, but then I'd take the wheel. This time I said, take away my cravings. And that was April 6th, 2018. And ever since that day, I've had one craving at all. It's a true miracle. Because after they said you're going to have to be sober at least 6 months, and then we're going to be able to maybe do a liver transplant. I kept going to the doctors at Northwestern. I had a liver team, a bunch of specialists, and the second time I went in there, they said, "We don't know what happened. All your scans and all your levels are back to normal. We've never seen anything like that. It's a true miracle, and somebody upstairs is looking out there." And the whole time, God's carried me. The whole time. Finally, I had him let me down so I could walk beside him and follow him, not just be a fan of him, but follow him. And you know, that's the Great Commission. You know, that's what it's all about. When I was struggling out the pools in 2007, after we lost Josh Hancock, and one of my friends, teammates, he sat down and he said, "Man, what's wrong, man? We need you." And I said, "I know I'll be able to play it. I'm just suffering a little bit." When God gave me this second chance, I said, "I'm going to go out and I'm going to share, and I'm going to tell people what God can do in your life. I'm going to show that there's hope to never give up. If you let Him steer, that He will steer you on your path. He has a perfect plan for you, and He made you perfect for a specific purpose." And so that's what I try to share. You know, it's been an amazing ride. FCA has, so graciously asked me to be a part of their ministry. And sometimes when you have no hope, you feel like you're in a pit of despair, he can pull you out. And that leads me to the scripture that I just feel deeply about. It's Psalms 41:2. I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and he turned to me and he heard me cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along. And that's exactly what he did. He pulled me from the hands of death, from the pit of hell, and put my feet on solid ground, which is Jesus Christ. And I'm so thankful. Thank you guys for letting me share.
Again, thank you so much for being here. Safe travels back home, and God bless.